We are counting down the top 20 legendary stores that Black women cherished. Icons of style, community, and self-expression, all lost to time. From beloved neighborhood shops where everyone knew your name, to grand department stores tied to milestones in civil rights history, each spot on this list shaped not just wardrobes, but lasting memories. Which boutique or clothier left the deepest mark, and why? Let us begin the journey, starting at number 20. Marianne stores meant that back to school, shopping in Chicago, neighborhoods was both affordable and familiar. Opening in the mid-1960s, this local chain built its reputation on basics for the whole family, especially for women who needed extended sizes. Most of the staff lived nearby, and regulars remember cashiers who could recall a child's size from the year before. For many, a trip to Marianne's was a late summer ritual, with new socks, sturdy shoes, and a dress or two, all under one roof. By October 1985, after 2 decades of serving the community, Marianne Stores closed its doors for good, swept away by mall expansions and a wave of retail bankruptcies. The loss left a gap in the neighborhood, but memories of those simple shopping trips linger on. Stewart's opened in Detroit in 1968, quickly becoming the neighborhood spot for women who needed more than just a new blouse. They needed a perfect fit. The staff didn't just sell you off the rack. They handed out business cards for trusted tailors and seamstresses, including Miss Viola, who penned countless first suits and Sunday dresses in her tiny back room. Stewart's was where working women could get their uniforms hemmed just right, or a church outfit altered for the next big event. When the lease expired in August 1989 and the rent tripled overnight, Stewart's closed for good. But for 2 decades, it was the kind of place where a referral to a good tailor was as valuable as a sale, and every customer left feeling polished and prepared. Petrie Stores turned shopping in Philadelphia into a fast-paced ritual for women on the go. From 1970 to 1990, rows of dresses changed almost weekly, tempting regulars to stop by during work breaks or after their shift. The staff knew their best customers by name, often slipping the freshest styles under the counter until payday. Catalogs from 1982 still pop up online, showing racks packed with bold prints and sharp silhouettes. By March 1990, unsold inventory began to pile up as trends moved even faster, forcing Petrie to close its doors. For 20 years, Petrie made it easy to keep up with the latest looks, no matter how quickly they changed. Judy's brought something rare to Los Angeles: prom and evening gowns made to celebrate curves, not hide them. Beginning in 1972, girls flocked to the shop on Crenshaw, hoping to find a dress that fit just right. No pinching, no squeezing, no settling. If the zipper would not budge, seamstress Gloria would call you upstairs, tape measure in hand, ready to work her magic, so every girl left feeling like the main event. For 20 years, Judy's was part of the West Coast prom ritual, a place where mothers, aunts, and daughters laughed, fussed, and sometimes cried over taffeta and sequins. When the store closed in July 1992 after a chain buyout, Los Angeles lost more than a boutique. It lost a rite of passage for generations of young Black women ready to step out and shine. Ups and Downs in Gary, Indiana was the spot where Midwest teens tested out their wildest looks. Opening in 1969, this junior store encouraged trying on bold prints, neon stripes, and anything that made you stand out in the school hallway, even if your mom raised an eyebrow at first. Shoppers remember the rush of picking out a first, daring outfit, feeling both nervous and proud when stepping out of the fitting room. For nearly 2 decades, Ups and Downs gave young women a place to experiment before big events or just for fun. After a retail merger in May 1988, the doors closed for good, but the memories of fearless style choices still spark a smile. Fashion Bug became a Sunday morning fixture across Atlanta neighborhoods, especially for mothers searching for the right church hat and a matching set that wouldn't break the bank. From the late 70s through the early 80s, the store's racks filled up with pastel suits and wide-brimmed hats, advertised week after week in the Atlanta Daily World. For many, Saturday meant a trip to Fashion Bug, the promise of something new for worship, a chance to stand a little taller in the pews. By August 1984, as malls brought in bigger chains and the store rebranded, families noticed the loss. The ritual of choosing that perfect hat with mama faded, but the memory of those quiet, shared moments lingers on. Contempo Casuals changed the rhythm of shopping in New York City. Opening in 1969, this chain promised a fresh look for every paycheck, tempting women to swap wardrobes with each new trend. Regulars made a habit of stopping by on payday, scanning racks for the latest jumpsuits or miniskirts before the styles disappeared. Catalogs from the early 1980s show bold patterns and accessories that flew off shelves as fast as they arrived. By September 1987, Contempo filed for Chapter 11, closing its city stores first and leaving trendsetters searching for their next style fix. For nearly 2 decades, Contempo fueled the chase for what's new, fast, fun, and always changing. Gantos arrived in southern malls in 1964, promising statement pieces that turned heads at every gathering. The racks were lined with bold blazers, vibrant skirts, and eye-catching accessories, clothes that drew compliments from coworkers and strangers alike. Shoppers remember the thrill of a staff member suggesting a full look, sometimes even pulling a jacket and matching earrings before you could ask. For many, Gantos was more than a store. It was where a new outfit could spark a conversation at church or the office and open doors to new circles. Vintage ads from the late 70s show women in sharp, color-blocked suits standing out in a crowd. When Gantos was consolidated into a larger retailer in December 1989, it ended a 25-year run of helping women craft identities that announced their arrival before they even spoke. The legacy of those daring, compliment-worthy outfits lives on in memory and in family photo albums. Foxmore meant something special for Cleveland teens searching for their own style. From 1970 through 1990, the store's racks were lined with jackets that dared you to stand out. One sales associate from the East Side remembers watching the same girls return year after year, each time a little bolder, a little more sure of themselves. The first time a young woman picked out a bright red bomber or a patterned blazer, it was more than just a purchase. It was a quiet kind of transformation. Foxmore became a place where self-identity took shape, one outfit at a time. Even as the city's economy struggled and regional chains started to fold, regulars kept coming back for that next big look. When Foxmore closed in November 1990, after 2 decades of shaping confidence, it left behind memories of growing up and growing into yourself. Lane Bryant's city branches felt like a revolution for women who never saw themselves in fashion ads or on standard racks. From the 1960s through the 1980s, these stores stood out for offering extended sizes, long before most brands even used the words plus size. For many, stepping into a Lane Bryant meant finally finding a dress that did not need to be hidden or altered, one that simply fit and flattered. Women recall the dignity of the fitting rooms, where staff treated every customer with care and respect. One shopper put it best: for the first time, she felt seen. Ebony and Jet magazines ran features on Lane Bryant's urban presence, celebrating the way these stores centered women of all shapes. But in the mid-1980s, a wave of restructuring swept through, closing many city locations by 1987. Even as the brand evolved, the loss of those neighborhood stores left a lasting imprint on the women they empowered. Lerner's Atlanta branch turned back to school shopping into an event that brought the whole community together. Every August in the 1970s, the store hosted its back-to-school elegance runway show, filling the Greenbrier Mall with the buzz of families and the flash of cameras from the Atlanta Daily World. Girls lined up backstage, some in homemade pageant sashes, ready to model the latest jumpers and corduroy skirts on a makeshift catwalk. For many, this was the first taste of runway glamour, an afternoon where classmates, teachers, and neighbors cheered as each girl strutted under the bright store lights. These shows were not just about clothes, they were about confidence, pride, and seeing yourself celebrated in public. When Lerner was bought by Limited Brands in February 1988 and the Atlanta store was rebranded that spring, the tradition ended. But the memory of those fashion shows and the sense of belonging they created remains part of Atlanta's story. Riches stood at the heart of Atlanta's shopping scene for decades, but its true legacy began in March 1960, when local students staged sit-ins at the Magnolia Room, demanding the right to try on clothes just like anyone else. That quiet act of courage opened fitting rooms and changed the rules of dignity in Southern department stores. Soon, Black women and girls could step into those mirrored stalls, zip up a dress, and see themselves reflected with pride. The Magnolia Room became more than a tea spot. It was a place for mother-daughter lunches after a successful shopping trip, a ritual that felt like a reward for battles hard won. By the time Riches merged into Macy's in January 1992, its fitting rooms had already witnessed a generation's worth of victories, turning everyday shopping into a statement of belonging and self-respect. W.T. Grant was the kind of store families counted on for basics, socks, cookware, and school clothes, all within a short walk or bus ride from home. For years, these stores anchored neighborhoods, offering steady work and familiar faces behind the counter. Then, in October 1976, everything changed overnight. Headlines announced bankruptcy, and by the next morning, doors were locked, registers empty, and 12,000 workers across the country found themselves without a job. Shoppers who stopped by for a pack of undershirts or a quick lunch at the counter found shuttered windows and handwritten signs taped to the glass. The sudden collapse left entire blocks without their go-to store, forcing families to search farther for everyday necessities. The loss of W.T. Grant was not just about bargains, it was the disappearance of a neighborhood anchor, gone without warning. G.C. Murphy stores brought a sense of everyday dignity to downtown streets from Pittsburgh to Baltimore. In the 1960s, after years of protests and quiet determination, Black women could finally take a seat at the lunch counter, order a slice of pie, sip a Coke, and know they belonged. It wasn't just about shopping for socks or a new purse. Murphy's was where friends met after church, where a quick lunch turned into an afternoon of laughter, and where children learned to count their change at the register. The Pittsburgh Courier ran stories about these moments, and oral histories still recall the pride of being served without hesitation. As the 1980s wore on, city stores closed one by one. By September 1984, the last Murphy's in Pittsburgh locked its doors. But for 2 decades, that simple act of being welcomed at the counter turned a 5 and dime into a cornerstone of community life. Wanamaker's in Philadelphia was never just a store, it was a destination. Stepping through its grand brass doors, shoppers were greeted by soaring ceilings, marble pillars, and the sound of the world's largest pipe organ echoing through the halls. For many Black families, a trip to Wanamaker's was reserved for special occasions, searching for the perfect holiday gown or choosing a Sunday best dress that would turn heads in the church pews. The tradition wasn't just about buying clothes, it was about ceremony. Pausing to listen as the organist played during December and feeling the hush of the crowd as music filled the atrium. Even as the city changed, Wanamaker's stood for elegance and possibility. That all ended in May 1987, when the store merged with Strawbridge, and the famous building was repurposed in 1995. Still, memories of those grand shopping rituals of velvet gloves, polished shoes, and music in the air linger long after the last register closed. Fashion bars stood as a cornerstone for shoppers in Chicago and Gary, offering everything from sharp workwear to church-ready dresses. By the mid-1980s, it was not just a store. It was a major employer with over 500 people on payroll, most living in the neighborhoods they served. In August 1987, headlines in the Chicago Defender told the story week by week, bankruptcy filings followed by pink slips handed out to 520 employees in a single month. Shoppers rushed in, hoping to score deals as racks emptied and clearance lines wrapped around the block. For many families, the loss hit twice, first as a favorite place to shop, then as a lost paycheck. The clearance chaos made front-page news, but behind every sale was a worker facing an uncertain future. Fashion bars' collapse left a void in both closets and communities that still lingers decades later. Casual Corner became essential for women stepping into new careers during the 1970s and the 1980s. Known for its racks of crisp blazers and sharply tailored skirts, the store helped shape the look of the emerging Black professional class. In Greensboro and beyond, women would return year after year, often greeted by the same seamstress who kept their measurements on handwritten cards tucked behind the counter. That personal touch wasn't just about fit. It was about feeling prepared to walk into any boardroom or office and own the space. For many, these fittings turned into quiet rituals, with mothers and daughters building a wardrobe that reflected ambition and pride. When the flagship closed in February 1991 after a lost lease, it wasn't just another retail casualty. It meant the end of a trusted partnership, where workwear and self-confidence were stitched together, one alteration at a time. In 1978, Hutzler's in Baltimore made beauty history with its shades of brown counter. For the first time, women with deep complexions could walk up to a department store counter and find a foundation that truly matched their skin. The launch was celebrated in jet and ebony, where ads promised a shade for every brown. Customers like Sonia still remember the moment a sales representative found her perfect match, and she said she cried right there at the counter, finally seeing herself reflected in the mirror. Makeovers became more than just a treat, they were a revelation, lifting self-esteem and changing how women saw themselves. For a decade, the counter drew loyal crowds. But in December 1988, Hutzler's removed it during a wave of downsizing. The loss was felt deeply, but the impact of seeing every shade honored on those shelves still echoes in memories and family photo albums. Tucked away in Greensboro, Montaldo's offered more than high-end dresses. It built a legacy of loyalty, one measurement at a time. Behind the counter, a leather-bound ledger tracked fittings for mothers and daughters, year after year. Each entry told a story. Hems let down as girls grew, waist taken in after college, and sleeves adjusted for special occasions. Customers remember Mrs. Reeves, the owner, greeting families by name and opening the book to find their exact measurements, sometimes going back decades. The experience felt like a private ritual, quiet fittings, gentle pinning, and whispered advice about fabrics that would last. For many, the trust built with Montaldo's seamstresses carried across generations, with wedding gowns and church suits stitched into family memories. When Mrs. Reeves retired in April 1986, the store closed with her, leaving behind not just empty racks, but a record of lives measured and milestones marked in careful handwriting. Toast and Strawberries opened on DuPont Circle in 1966, bringing something rare to Washington, D.C., a Black-owned boutique run by Rosemary Reed Miller that became a launch pad for local designers and a gathering place for the community. Every season, the store's quarterly fashion shows transformed the shop into a runway, shining a spotlight on Black talent, long before mainstream stages caught on. Miller insisted on featuring designers who reflected her clientele, making sure the latest looks were modeled by women who looked like the customers themselves. Beyond the clothes, Toast and Strawberries was famous for its hats, wide-brimmed, feathered, or bejeweled, worn for graduations, weddings, and Sunday church, each one a rite of passage. The shop's window displays and show programs became keepsakes, and for many, the first real taste of high fashion came from a Toast and Strawberries event. When Rosemary Reed Miller retired in September 1984, she closed the doors to focus on preserving the history she helped create. The legacy of Toast and Strawberries lives on in the confidence it inspired and the doors it opened for Black designers and shoppers alike. Across all 20 stores, one truth stands out. Retail was never just about shopping. It was about belonging, visibility, and shaping identity. These vanished spaces reveal how Black women built community and found empowerment, even in the aisles of a mall. Their loss reminds us that where we gather shapes who we become. What store do you still miss? Share your memories in the comments.